8 great sufferings that drag humans into samsara. Understanding leads to enlightenment. Welcome back everyone to Mind Podcast. In samsara, humans must endure 8 great sufferings: birth, aging, sickness, death, separation from loved ones, association with those we hate, unfulfilled desires, and the suffering of the 5 aggregates. By understanding these 8 sufferings, you can change your life and become stronger. The first suffering is the suffering of birth. People are reborn according to their karma, with 3 conditions coming together: past life karma, the father, and the mother. The intermediate being is conceived by seeing the parents in union, arousing lustful thoughts, and thus forming the fetus. Below is the life force, above are the vital organs, and in between is the embryo. When the mother eats hot food, the fetus feels intense heat, as if in boiling oil. When the mother eats cold food, the fetus feels extreme cold, as if in an ice hell. The fetus spends 10 months in darkness, surrounded by impurities, akin to a prison. Upon birth, the infant experiences the suffering of being cut by the wind blade, feeling as cold as being sliced by knives. Hence, the newborn cries out, "Suffering, suffering." No one can escape this suffering. The second suffering is the suffering of aging. As time passes, the body ages. Hair turns gray, skin wrinkles, energy wanes, the body becomes frail, and we become dependent on others. In the Shurangama assembly, the Buddha asked King Pasenadi, "Does the great king also suffer from aging?" The king replied, "It changes in subtle moments. I do not realize it. Autumn passes, winter comes, and now I am like this. I remember my youthful vitality, but now my teeth are almost all gone, and my hair is graying. I don't think I will last much longer." Even a king as powerful as a heavenly sun cannot escape the suffering of aging. The ancients said, "Wealth cannot buy youth. As time passes, hair changes color." The third suffering is the suffering of sickness. When the 4 elements are unbalanced, countless illnesses arise. Few people live a lifetime without sickness. The ancients said, "Only when sickness comes do we realize the body is suffering. When healthy, we should live for others." Not to mention severe illnesses. Even a toothache or dizziness can disrupt our peace, appetite, and sleep. During the 3 Kingdoms period, John Fei, known for his strength and courage, told Marquis Wu, "There is nothing in this world I fear." The Marquis wrote the word sickness and showed it to him, asking, "Do you fear this?" Zhang Fei looked at the Marquis and said, "Who isn't afraid of this? I have suffered much from it." This shows that when sickness comes, even heroes cannot resist. When we are sick, we should wholeheartedly chant the Buddha's name, not letting the suffering of illness cause distress. Thus, at the end of life, amidst 100 sufferings, we can still be free. The fourth suffering is the suffering of death. The scriptures say, "This body is formed by the union of conditions, and when those conditions dissipate, this illusory body also perishes." Birth leads to death. At birth, the 4 elements are borrowed to form the body. At death, the 4 elements separate, causing pain like a living buffalo being skinned. Bones, flesh, and tendons are the earth element. Blood, pus, and saliva are the water element. Warmth in the body is the fire element. Breath and movement are the wind element. At death, the wind element departs first, causing breath to stop and limbs to stiffen. Next, the fire element leaves, causing the body to grow cold. The water element follows, and finally the earth element remains as bones. An old saying goes, "White bones on the mountain turn to mud." Death is inevitable. No one can escape it. While alive, we should contemplate life's great matter of birth and death, as money and wealth are useless. Even if loved ones cry, they cannot change it. Even if surrounded by children and grandchildren, no one can die in your place. Seeing others die, my heart burns like fire, not for others, but for my own inevitable death. The fifth suffering is the suffering of separation from loved ones. Loving someone yet being separated from them causes suffering. Love here refers to affection among family and friends. Separation feels like a knife cutting the heart, as the saying goes, loving deeply, hating deeply, parting with sorrow. People often don't realize that life's gatherings and partings are impermanent. Parents' deep love ends in separation. Spouses' deep affection ends in parting. Life is like birds sharing a roost, dispersing when disaster strikes. The sixth suffering is the suffering of association with those we hate. Being with those we dislike is suffering. This association is due to past life karma, Heavy karma results in deep enmity, light karma in jealousy. Living together without affection is due to karmic force. Wanting to part yet having to stay, whether as father and son, siblings, spouses, or friends, heavy karma leads to violence, light karma to quarrels. Due to karma, separation is impossible, like a mute person eating bitter herbs, unable to express the bitterness. The seventh suffering is the suffering of unfulfilled desires. Desiring what we cannot achieve causes suffering. People wish for completeness, but unmet desires lead to suffering. Fulfillment brings joy, while unfulfillment brings sorrow. The world's troubles arise from ignorance and unawareness. Gain and loss, wealth and poverty are all due to karma. The world is like a flowing river. Don't cling to fame and fortune. Simple food and clothing suffice. Wealth is not to be pursued. The eighth suffering is the suffering of the five aggregates. The five aggregates are form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. Form pertains to the body, the other four to the mind. Simply put, this suffering encompasses bodily and mental suffering. The eighth suffering includes the previous seven. The body suffers from birth, aging, sickness, and death, hunger, thirst, heat, cold, and toil. The mind suffers from sorrow, anger, anxiety, and attachment. Prince Siddhartha saw old age, sickness, and death, and his deep wisdom and compassion led him to renounce the palace in search of liberation. In contrast, those of ordinary intellect see suffering as joy. They might argue that birth is not suffering because they don't remember it. Aging is not suffering because they are not old yet. Sickness is not suffering because they rarely fall ill. Death is not suffering because it hasn't happened yet. Separation from loved ones, association with those they hate, and unfulfilled desires are also dismissed by them. But even they suffer from the aggregates of form and mind, physically and mentally thriving, yet feeling restless and troubled. Society's crimes of murder, robbery, rape, and assault often stem from idleness and excess. People's psychological and physiological stimuli lead to unrest and violence, indulging in drugs, alcohol, and reckless behaviors. Their bodies and minds burn with unrelenting desire, causing suffering. This is the suffering of the five aggregates. The above are the 8 great sufferings. These are general outlines encompassing many other forms of suffering. Reflect on yourself and others. Have we not endured some of these sufferings? Those who study Buddhism and contemplate these 8 great sufferings are close to the path. There's an allegory about human psychology. A bee sipping nectar in a lotus flower becomes so absorbed that it doesn't notice the night falling and the petals closing. Trapped inside, it thinks, "I'll spend the night here. In the morning, the petals will open and I'll be free." But just then, an elephant comes and eats the lotus, bee and all. We are like that bee, daydreaming about some future or career, only to realize it's an illusion. Life unfolds in ways we can't foresee or control. Once, the Buddha pointed to a log floating down the Ganges and said to the monks, "Your practice to attain liberation is like that log heading to the sea. The log may be washed ashore, sink, be caught on an island, be taken by someone, rot, or be caught in a whirlpool, preventing it from reaching the sea." Similarly, monks may encounter obstacles hindering their path to liberation. They may become attached to sensual pleasures, fame, wrong views, or bad friends, deviating from nirvana. If the log wishes to reach the ocean, it must stay in the current. Likewise, monks must follow the middle way, grounded in precepts, concentration, and wisdom. Anyone seeking liberation or a better life must understand themselves and their circumstances. We live in an unstable world, not entirely roses nor entirely thorns. Roses are beautiful and fragrant, but have thorns. Optimists see a bed of roses, while pessimists see only thorns. Realists see both. To enjoy roses, one must endure thorns, but don't let thorns prevent you from enjoying roses. A wise person sees roses as roses and thorns as thorns, carefully avoiding harm. Like a pendulum, the 8 worldly winds, gain and loss, honor and disgrace, praise and blame, pleasure and pain are always present, faced by everyone throughout life. These 8 factors form 4 pairs, half roses and half thorns. Gain and loss. For business people, gain and loss are familiar. Gaining brings joy and happiness. This is normal, as life without joy is not worth living. Especially in a competitive and chaotic world, moments of happiness are essential. Whether material or spiritual, gained through righteous or unrighteous means, happiness brings joy and health. However, for Buddhists, wealth is not the most important. Wealth should be gained righteously through wisdom and labor. Wealth acquired through harm, deceit, or exploitation is not encouraged. Wealth is not the goal but a means for a better life. Wealth should ensure stability and comfort for oneself, family, parents, relatives, and friends, help those in need, fulfill civic duties, and support genuine spiritual practitioners who guide people on the right path. Money should be valued and used appropriately. Gains also come with losses. For those who understand life's nature, loss brings great suffering. Joy in gain turns to despair and loss, sometimes leading to suicide. Facing life's ups and downs, we must accept and balance our minds. Everyone experiences highs and lows. Being mentally prepared for both gains and losses reduces disappointment. For instance, if something is stolen, we naturally feel sad. But sadness doesn't recover the lost item. We should adopt a philosophical, open-minded attitude, thinking the thief needed it more and let him be satisfied. It is said that during the Lunar New Year, an 11-year-old child received many red envelopes filled with money. However, a thief broke into the house and stole all the money. The parents were very upset about the loss, but the child told them, "Why be sad? The money was never really ours, so in truth, we haven't lost anything." This shows that despite being very young, the child understood that one should not regret what does not belong to them, and that even if they do, it is of no use and won't bring it back. In the time of the Buddha, there was a lady who regularly offered food to the Sangha. One day, while serving the monks, she received news of a misfortune befalling her family. Nonetheless, she calmly continued her work as if nothing had happened. At that moment, her maidservant accidentally broke a milk pot while offering it to the monks. Thinking the lady would be upset, one monk consoled her, saying, "All things are impermanent." The lady respectfully replied, "Venerable sir, this milk pot is nothing. I just received news of a great misfortune in my family, yet I remained calm and continued my offering. What is this pot compared to such misfortune, venerable sir?" The lady's courageous attitude was truly admirable. Once, the Buddha was begging for alms in a village. Mara, the tempter, tried to prevent the villagers from offering food to the Buddha. Seeing the Buddha returning with an empty bowl, Mara mockingly asked if the Buddha was hungry and suffering. The Buddha solemnly replied that as one who has overcome all obstacles, he always felt happy. The Buddha added, "Whoever gives joy will always be happy, like the devas in the Kwangam heaven." On another occasion, the Buddha and the Sangha were spending the rainy season in a village at the invitation of a Brahmin householder. However, the Brahmin forgot his duty, so for 3 months, the Buddha and the Sangha had no food and had to eat horse grain offered by a horsekeeper. We must learn to accept loss courageously and cheerfully, because loss does not happen just once or twice in life, but very often. We need to face them with joy and see it as an opportunity to practice and develop noble qualities. Glory and humiliation. Glory and humiliation are inevitable in this world of conditions. When we gain glory, we rejoice. When we are humiliated, we feel sorrow. Glory makes our hearts excited, while humiliation makes us melancholy. It seems everyone wants to be famous, to see their image in the media. We feel extremely happy when our activities, however insignificant, are publicized. Some people even go to great lengths to appear before the public or in the media, sometimes creating scandals to attract attention or bribing influential people in the media industry. To gain fame, some show generosity in public but are indifferent to the poor and needy neighbors. Their generosity stems from selfish motives. In reality, we do not need to pursue fame. If we are worthy of fame, it will come to us naturally, like fragrance from the virtue. Flowers attract bees and butterflies with their scent and nectar. They don't need to invite. The bees and butterflies come on their own. If we are deserving, fame will come to us, and our good name will spread like the fragrance of virtuous people carried far by the wind. But we must know that things like glory, fame, and honor are as impermanent as any other worldly things. U.S. President Abraham Lincoln once said, "Avoid fame if you want peace." On glory, and what about humiliation? It is indeed uncomfortable, isn't it? Even hearing or thinking about it, harsh words can disturb and unsettle our minds. If it is false rumors aimed at defaming us, it feels even worse. It often takes years to build a castle, but with modern weapons, it can be destroyed in a blink. Similarly, it may take years or a lifetime to build a reputation, but a single blemish can ruin it. No one in this life is free from attack, criticism, and humiliation, not even the Buddha. The Buddha was a revered teacher, but he also endured much slander. In those days, great people were known both for admiration and envy. The Buddha was once falsely accused of having murdered a woman who frequently visited the monastery and buried her body there. Eventually, the accusers had to admit they had killed the woman to falsely accuse the Buddha and the Sangha. When the Buddha became famous, respected, and offered alms, many started slandering him. Even his cousin Devadatta conspired to kill him. But all the accusations and harm failed. A perfect and saintly person like the Buddha faced such incidents. So who are we to expect only peace in our lives? The higher you climb, the more people see you, but they only see your back, not your chest. This gossipy world will scrutinize your smallest faults but ignore your virtues, even if they are evident. The winnower separates the chaff and retains the grain, while the filter keeps the coarse and lets the essence flow through. Cultured people retain the essence and discard the dregs, while uncultured people do the opposite. Life is diverse, with both refined and coarse people. We should not waste time correcting false rumors unless necessary. Your enemies will delight in seeing you hurt and suffering. That's what they want. So it's best to ignore those slanders. No one can stop rumors from spreading because people have their tongues. When faced with rumors or criticism, whether intentional or unintentional, it's best to act like a deaf person who hears nothing. Or, if you hear, think that they are talking about someone else with the same name. If you know they are talking about you, respond like the Buddha. He said, if someone offers a gift and the recipient does not accept it, the gift returns to the giver. So if you insult me, and I do not accept, you bring harm upon yourself. Like an echo follows a sound, a shadow follows a body, there is no escape. This path is full of thorns and stones. We cannot pave every road. It is best to wear shoes to protect our feet and boldly step forward. Be like a lion, unafraid of sounds, like the wind free from nets, like a lotus unsullied by the mud. Walk alone like a fearless lord of the jungle. In this world, we may hear malicious rumors, false conclusions, or harsh words from people's mouths, but like a lion, we should disregard them, and they will end as they began. Let the dogs bark. The caravan moves on. We live in a muddy world, but the lotus still grows in the mud without being tainted, instead spreading fragrance and beautifying life. We can be like the lotus, living a noble and pure life, despite life's occasional mud throwing. Although not easy, we should try to be less attached to life. We come alone and leave alone. Detachment and non-expectation will keep our minds peaceful. It is ironic that great people often face slander, humiliation, and even murder. Socrates was forced to drink poison in prison, Jesus was crucified, Gandhi was shot dead, and so on. Blaise Pascal noted, "Being a good person is dangerous. If great people die for their beliefs, who are we to complain that our goodness is not rewarded?" Yes, it is dangerous to be good, but history is not short of such good people. They may be criticized, attacked, or killed, but after death, they are honored and canonized when people recognize their contributions. In fact, great people do not care about fame or criticism from others. They are neither angry when criticized, nor happy when praised. They just do what they see fit without worrying if people acknowledge their contributions. Praise and criticism. When praised, we feel excited. When criticized, we feel sad. Between praise and criticism, the Buddha taught to maintain equanimity, not too happy nor too sad, like a solid rock undisturbed by the wind. Praise, if sincere, should be cherished, but if insincere, it is flattery meant to deceive. But in any case, we should see it as just sounds in the wind. It is best not to be influenced. Typically, a sincere compliment has a long-lasting impact, and people can easily achieve their goals through praise. A heartfelt compliment attracts the listener even before it is spoken. When starting a conversation, if we compliment the audience, we gain their attention. Conversely, if we criticize them, the reaction is negative. Of course, the compliment must be sincere. Educated people recognize and reject flattery. Sincere people compliment genuinely without envy. If they criticize, they do so with compassion to help the other improve. As Marian Fool said, "Without criticism, you will not have success." The Buddha taught, "One who speaks much is criticized, one who speaks little is criticized, and one who is silent is criticized. In this world, there is no one who is not criticized." Criticism seems to be a legacy of the human world. Most people have a tendency to find faults in others without paying attention to their good qualities. Sometimes we do good deeds, but are suspected of having bad motives. Sometimes we try to help others, like taking on a friend's debt in times of trouble, but they still find fault in us and turn their backs when we need help. Those who slander the Buddha are usually bad people, but the Buddha, like a great elephant on the battlefield, endures all the arrows aimed at him. He endured all the slander with a calm mind. The Buddha did not get angry, sad, or seek revenge on those who criticized or slandered him because he believed, hatred is never appeased by hatred in this world. By non-hatred alone is hatred appeased. This is a law eternal. No religious teacher has received as much praise and as much slander as the Buddha. The more you work, the greater you become, and the greater you become, the more you are criticized and ridiculed. Remember that slander is a weapon used to bring down the enemy. The great Greek philosopher Socrates had a very harsh wife who often scolded him, especially when he went out to help others. But once, she was busy with an important task and forgot to scold him as he left the house, making him look sad. His friends asked why he looked so sad, and he replied that it was because his wife didn't scold him today. He explained that his wife's scolding was an opportunity for him to practice patience, and today he lost that opportunity, so he was sad. This indeed is a valuable lesson for all of us. When criticized or scolded, instead of retaliating in self-defense, we should see it as a good opportunity to practice patience. Happiness and suffering. Happiness and suffering are two categories that profoundly impact humans. What makes us feel comfortable is happiness, and what makes us uncomfortable is suffering. Ordinary happiness is usually the satisfaction of desires. However, human desires have no limits, and greed is insatiable. When one desire is fulfilled, another arises. Human enjoyment essentially revolves around the 5 sensual pleasures. The highest and only happiness for an ordinary person is these 5 sensual pleasures. However, this happiness is very fleeting and uncertain. Can material wealth bring true happiness? If so, why do wealthy people still have dissatisfactions in life? In developed countries where material prosperity is at its peak, not all people feel happy. Clearly, material wealth alone cannot lead to complete happiness. Money does not make people happy. So, does ruling the world bring happiness? Alexander the Great conquered nearly the whole world, but was he happy? When we read modern history, we are horrified to know that millions of innocent people were killed by dictators like Stalin, Pol Pot, and Hitler. They believed they could create a new world by eliminating those unlike them, those they deemed inferior. But what did they achieve? The entire world condemns and curses them. Often, the lives of politicians and people with great power are very insecure, as in the cases of Gandhi and US President John F. Kennedy. True happiness can only be found within, not defined by concepts like money, power, glory, or territorial conquest. Possessions gained through unjust power will become the source of suffering for the user. What one person considers happiness may not be happiness to another. Alcohol and meat may be delicious to one but poison to another. The Buddha taught that there are 4 types of happiness in the world. The first is the happiness of having wealth, including money, health, longevity, strength, beauty, and children. The second is the happiness of enjoying one's possessions. Ordinary people love enjoyment. The Buddha did not advise everyone to abandon worldly pleasures, but to know how to enjoy without causing suffering. Enjoy not just for oneself, but also share and help others. The food we eat passes through the throat and is gone, but if we share it, it lasts. What we give, we receive in return. People will remember us for the good things we have done for the world. Prophet Muhammad said, "What we can truly call ours are the things we give away." The third is the happiness of being debt-free. If we live frugally and are content with what we have, we will not incur debt. A debtor lives in anxiety and inferiority, especially towards the creditor. Even if poor, being debt-free makes one feel light and relaxed, without anyone's criticism. Living without criticism is true happiness. A person free from criticism brings joy to themselves and positively affects others through their aura of happiness. Most people find joy in material pleasures, but some find joy in renunciation, non-attachment, or transcending material joys, which is a spiritual happiness. Ordinary happiness is good, but often comes with suffering, which not everyone can endure. Suffering comes from many sources: aging, illness, change, and loss. When ill, we should learn to accept and comfort ourselves by thinking it could have been worse, which could have led to death. Parting from loved ones is suffering, but we should think that all relationships must end. This is an opportunity to practice detachment. Or we can think this is the result of past karma. In general, in life, unpleasant things happen more often than pleasant ones, so we must learn to adapt and overcome obstacles. There's a saying, when you laugh, the world laughs with you. When you cry alone. Even the Buddha, who had eradicated all defilements and karmic retributions, suffered from illness and accidents. He had headaches, back pain, was injured by a rock thrown by Devadatta, and had to live alone in the forest for 3 months when the monks in Kapilavastu divided and ignored him. Regardless of the circumstances, the Buddha remained undisturbed between suffering and happiness. The master always maintained a calm mind, and death, perhaps the most painful event for everyone, is inevitable. Some deaths are unbearable, but everyone must die, without exception, sooner or later, in one way or another. Like ripe fruit must fall, the sun rises and sets, and flowers bloom in the morning and wither in the afternoon. Knowing it is unavoidable, we should learn to let go so that when impermanence comes, we are not fearful or confused. In the Anguttara Nikaya, Book 3, the Buddha taught about the 8 worldly conditions. In the world, beings are subject to 8 conditions. What are the 8? Gain and loss, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, happiness and suffering. These 8 worldly conditions spin beings around in the world. Monks, you should seek ways to abandon these 8 worldly conditions. Thus, monks, you should learn this. He also taught that, when encountering worldly conditions, the mind of an arahant never wavers between gain and loss, fame and disgrace, praise and blame, happiness and suffering. We should maintain the equilibrium of our mind. Perhaps we should follow the practice of the earth. Whatever is thrown on the ground, whether clean or dirty, fragrant or foul, the earth treats them equally, without anger or joy. Similarly, before good and bad, we should keep our minds very peaceful. Before his death, Alexander the Great called all his soldiers and said, I am about to leave this world. I have 3 wishes, and you must fulfill them. After gathering all his strength, Alexander conveyed his last 3 wishes. The first wish, he wanted his coffin to be carried by the best physicians of his time. The second wish, he wanted all the wealth he had accumulated to be scattered along the path to his grave. The third wish, he wanted his hands to be left hanging outside the coffin, swinging freely for everyone to see. The soldiers obeyed their commander's orders with tears, all puzzled and curious about these strange requests, but no one dared to ask the reason. One of Alexander's close aides boldly kissed his hand and asked, Your Majesty, we will follow your commands, but could you tell us why you want this? Finally, the king explained that these were the 3 lessons he had learned in life. The first wish, he wanted the best physicians to carry his coffin, because he wanted everyone to see that when the time comes, even the best physicians cannot change anything. A doctor cannot truly heal someone, especially when facing death. The doctor is completely powerless. I hope everyone will learn to cherish their lives. The second wish, scattering wealth along the path, was to let people realize that the wealth one spends a lifetime accumulating cannot be taken with them when they die. It stays in this world. Death ends it all. People should not be like me, chasing the dream of wealth. I spent my whole life pursuing wealth, but I wasted most of my time. The final wish, to have hands swinging outside the coffin, he wanted everyone to see that we come into this world empty-handed and leave it empty-handed. All the lands I conquered, the mighty army, the sharp swords, and all the wealth are meaningless. After saying this, he closed his eyes and took his last breath. Alexander the Great's final wishes are profound lessons about life for us. While we can learn to appreciate the present life, yesterday is the past, tomorrow is a mystery, and today is a gift. Because when facing death, we carry nothing with us. returning to dust empty-handed.